This discussion must include what's happened to a man in Colorado. So let's pause and introduce another thought. In 1865, the United States passed the 13th Amendment to the Constitution, which says, "Neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as a punishment for crime whereof the party shall have been duly convicted, shall exist within the United States, or any place subject to their jurisdiction." The part that forbids involuntary servitude seems applicable in the case of Jack Phillips of Masterpiece Cake Shop in Lakewood, Colorado, who has been hounded by LGBT activists through the Colorado Civil Rights Commission because of his deeply held religious convictions. He refuses to bake a cake to celebrate a gay wedding. The same thing applies to Barronelle Stutzman in Washington State, who refused service to a gay couple who wanted her to make a flower arrangement for their counterfeit wedding. When will our courts get their heads on straight, pun intended, and realize that homosexuality is nothing more than a lifestyle choice and an aberrant/perverted sexual practice, not a civil right? In these two cases, and others, it seems the free exercise clause of the Constitution should have supremacy over a state's civil rights laws. The legal definition of involuntary servitude includes the following. Two essential elements of involuntary servitude are involuntariness, which is compulsion to act against one's will, and servitude, which is some form of labor for another. Since Section 2 of the 13th Amendment gives Congress the power to enforce the provisions of Section 1, where was Congress in defending Jack Phillips? They were nowhere to be found. Regardless, how can Mr. Phillips be forced into labor except as punishment for a crime? Involuntary servitude has been illegal for more than 150 years, so he should not be forced into work he doesn't want to do, and shouldn't owe anybody any reasons, explanations, or excuses. But the left doesn't care about that, and cares even less about the Constitution. They only insist that everybody agree with their agenda, which has little to do with cakes and more to do with canceling our cultural traditions, uprooting our legal system and rule of law, and canceling our freedoms per Barack Chisholm's plan for world government. Compare, 2. The practice of physicians practicing medicine in America who decide they don't want to treat a particular patient for any reason, so they fire that person from their medical practice. There is no recourse for the patient because the physician can't be forced to do labor he doesn't want to do. How is that different from Jack Phillips' right to decide he doesn't want to make a cake for a gay wedding? For those who studied American history before the cancel culture is slandered, we know America was founded by Christians seeking freedom of worship. Unfortunately, we tend to see other immigrants as we see ourselves, and that is proving to be a mistake. For the first time in our history, our political leaders have had the unmitigated gall to allow foreigners to illegally enter into the U.S. from foreign countries, including those who hate America, our customs, our religion, our laws, our culture, and everything we've established from the beginning of the Republic. This practice is becoming kindling for future problems for the country. For example, the enemy is not only at the gates, they're in Congress. Ilhan Omar, now a member of the U.S. House of Representatives, rose like the phoenix from a hellhole that is Somalia to serve in the halls of power in America. But she brought her Islamic venom with her. Instead of appreciating her newly found freedoms in her adopted country that welcomed her with open arms, she hasn't missed an opportunity to spew her hate speech about Jews and the evils of America. She even says, if not justifies, Islamic terrorism is America's fault. She gets away with violating the rules of the House of Representatives by wearing a hijab on the floor of Congress, and yet her religion is downplayed while the Catholic religion of Supreme Court Justice Amy Coney Barrett became the subject of ridicule by Dianne Feinstein during Barrett's confirmation hearing. Why we don't have the same natural-born citizen requirement for members of our lawmaking body as we do the presidency is a mystery to me and our culture. Religious foundation, moral base, and national identity are being diluted, which is something we should correct if we are to survive as a cohesive nation. 5. The United States. By the way, there was a recent petition circulating on the internet seeking to kick Ilhan Omar out of Congress, and it was signed by hundreds of thousands of people. So, why is she still there if we have a government of the people, by the people, and for the people? It's been said by various folks over the years that those who don't remember history are doomed to repeat it. Rome, for example, as a city-state fell apart because it expanded too far and began to take into citizenship people from foreign regions and tribes that cared nothing about Rome and took citizenship strictly for the perks. Then there was inflation, taxation, and labor deficit, and this sounds familiar. 2. Is this why the Democrats drain the national coffers, tax and spend, and pay people to stay home instead of working? Anyway, not only did we put out the welcome mat for people who hate us, we let them serve in our halls of power, where they continue their anti-Semitic, anti-Christian, and anti-America rhetoric. Is that our way of comporting with Jesus' command to love our enemies? It would make religious sense to love them. Jesus said in Matthew 5:40, "If a man wants your tunic, give him your cloak as well." But he didn't say we should give them our whole country. More importantly, couldn't we keep them in their own country and love them from there? We don't even vet them to see if any of them are, by their ideology or origins, single-mindedly dedicated to our destruction, or whether they take seriously the mandate written in the Quran to behead non-believers. Barack Obama admitted thousands of such people into America, and we have become so conditioned to and gun-shy about political correctness that we heard him agree he had no authority to circumvent our immigration laws. But nobody had the courage to take him to task about it for fear of being called racists or Islamophobes. Joe Biden is doing the same thing, and still not a peep from we the people. Since when did being catcalled by fools become worse than losing our freedoms and perhaps our country? The answer lies below. You'll see it where we discuss Saul Alinsky and Abraham Maslow. But to continue the point about letting foreigners who hate us become members of our political power structure, let's ask what would have happened if we'd imported Nazis into America in 1942? What would have happened if we had put Heinrich Himmler into our Senate or perhaps the House of Representatives under the aegis of inclusiveness? Some might object to this analogy on the basis that there is a notable difference, because in 1942 we were at war with Germany, and the suggestion of putting a Nazi, an enemy, into our lawmaking body of government is a straw man argument and not even conceivable. However, the Muslim Brotherhood has sought the destruction of the Christian West since long before Nazis ever took control of the German government circa 1933. We forget at our own peril that the Quran, a direct competitor to the Bible, decrees that people who don't want to reject the Judeo-Christian faith and join the Islamic cult is to be put to death.